Verstappen and Leclerc trade early blows. Mercedes caught with their hand in the toilet. And Red Bull gives you nil pois. Welcome to the Late Night Race Review.
It's Monday, the 21st of March. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dave Jericho, and this aerodynamic bag of onions is none other than Mr. Owen Scott. If you like your Formula One news and reviews a day late and with the accuracy of a waffle in a wind tunnel, you've come to the right place. So without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Scotty, how was your weekend and how did you enjoy the Formula One?
I loved it. I love the fact that we don't have to hypothesize over whether Mercedes is sandbagging or the pace of Ferrari. We're finally here. We've arrived.
We have some answers. Jing had to tell me to calm down. The race was starting, and I was like a child hopped up on sugar, just class, ready to go. Like, yeah, that is the talking point, isn't it? That we now know sort of where teams are at. We're no longer guessing that we were from the testing, and even free practice we were left testing. People still kind of going on about, well, are Mercedes sandbagging? And, and we said this after testing when we were talking in the last episode, when we said we didn't think there was any way they could be sandbagging at this stage. The car looks such a handful for driving. Yeah. So as soon as qualifying started, it was fairly, although having said that, as much as it was clear that it was still a handful to drive, they did better than I expected.
Yeah, are you talking about Mercedes now?
Sorry, Mercedes. Yeah.
They did, but we can get into that when we get into reviewing the race and how things went. But I wasn't sure where Mercedes were at. I was still in the back of my head. I was like, they have to have more pace than they're actually saying. It has to be them holding back.
I thought when they all were coming out singing from the same hymn sheet, it did sound a little scripted. It sounded a little bit, someone's told them to say this. Let's keep it on the down low. We don't want anyone to know what we're up to. Like I said, from testing, it did look a handful. I'll just call out here the sort of the top 10. We won't go through all 20 here, but so we had Leclerc obviously qualified on pole. We had Verstappen, Sainz, Perez, Hamilton, Bottas, Magnussen, Alonso, Russell, and Gasly. So out of those, we'll just take the top 10. Oh, well, actually, and ones of note there, the McLarens, Norris and Ricciardo in 13th and 18th. So out of those, out of the top 10, who surprised you that was in the top 10 and who surprised you with a bad qualifying?
Bottas surprised me that he was going to be in the top 10, and the fact that he lined up directly beside Hamilton was fantastic. Great drama. I was very surprised because Bottas was actually on my list from last week as being my failler for this week.
Your underperformer, yeah.
Shows how much I know, because he was great, and my underachievers. Obviously you've got to look at McLaren from where they were last year. I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was, and I think I heard Lando saying that from the first lap in qualifying Q1, they knew what they had in front of them, and they knew what type of a weekend they were going to have. Things were not going to be good. So disappointed for McLaren, obviously, to see them drop off so much.
Well, that's why last week we were talking my underperformer, I think, as far as I know, was Lando Norris.
Yeah, on the head, you got that one.
And that was purely because we were talking about, and we won't go too much into it because we'll probably talk a little bit more about it when we were talking about the race, but that was purely off the back of them having to cool the brakes down more and knowing that to do that, they're going to have to both take away some of the airflow that's going over the car that's helping with the stability to direct that into the brakes. And not only that, but also put some sort of device, some sort of fins or something to that effect at the front of the car or towards the brakes that's going to be guiding that airflow. And that in itself, not only is it taking away the airflow from the rest of the car, but it's also disrupting from the design that they had. So it was
Yeah.
so as soon as I saw that was happening, that's why I picked Lando as my underperformer. I just like that's gonna be a disaster. And lo and behold.
Great attention to detail there, because I missed that completely. Well, not that I missed it completely. I think I chose to ignore it because I am a bit of a Lando fanboy.
How can you not be? That winning smile.
Such a cutie. But yeah, I chose to ignore it.
And just on the qualifying, that we'll cover a little bit more on this in the race when we're talking about the race, but just as it came out from the qualifying. So after qualifying, the FAI put out a notice saying cars finishing P1 to P10 for this event only, and in contradiction to the requirements of Article 40.6 of the FIA Formula One sporting regulations, you will be allowed to delay the covering of your cars 1 hour later than required in order to inspect the SSC fuel primer pump, right? So, and what that was they reckon there was some sort of, not necessarily a failure, but some sort of issue with the fuel primer pump that that could have ended up having issues if they carried it on into the race. So as far as I know, McLaren changed theirs, although it might have helped them. And I think Alfa Romeo changed theirs as well. Now, I don't think we know, I didn't see any information as to what sort of damage, or if there was any damage, maybe it was just precautionary that they changed it. And I don't know what was discovered at what point that prompted the FIA to bring out that notice to the teams to allow them to inspect that component, because that's a component. I can't think of the manufacturer now, but basically it's a standard component. So it means that the teams don't develop it themselves. It's developed by a sort of FIA and FIA partner, and they develop it and then issue it out to the teams and to keep, as cost cap, kind of, keep costs under control. So I suppose, anyway, the importance of that was that it was, if there was an issue with that, every team has been issued the exact same fuel pump. So that's what happened with after testing anyway. After qualifying.
And nothing else has come out about that since?
Well, yes, there is, but we'll kind of we'll go with the flow and follow that story into the race and how that unfolds into what kind of unfolded in the race itself. On the race, you touched on it there in the qualifying. We had Bottas lining up alongside Hamilton. That was kind of, as much as that, like, look, I'm a Ferrari fanboy, but I'm not. I wouldn't say when I say I'm a Ferrari fanboy, I suppose, everybody followed Michael Schumacher and, and older generations, obviously. But I'm more, they're such a historic team. It's criminal to see them underperforming for such a long period of time. So I just wanted to see them do well. But as much as I was excited at the performance and the prospect of seeing, or should I say, seeing Charles Leclerc on pole position, what drew my attention instantly was what was going to happen off the start between Bottas and Lewis Hamilton. Knowing damn well that in the back of Bottas's mind, and as much as everyone say, oh, he's a professional driver, they put these things out of their head, they focus on the race, he had got to be looking over there at the Mercedes and saying, I want to take you into turn one. And I just, even if he loses the position back again, just to take him into turn one, it'd be a real psychological boost for him. A little bit of a middle finger to Mercedes.
Yeah, it's if you put yourself in that situation, it's the message that you want to send. You got rid of me, and look what I'm doing now. Look what you could have had, and look what you're left with, type of thing.
I'm hot now.
Yeah. It's that, you break up with your girlfriend, you go to the gym, you lose a little bit of weight, and you see your girlfriend in the street, and now you're all thin.
Yeah.
And then you get another girlfriend, you get fat again. But yes, did it turn out that way, Dave? Did Bottas take Hamilton indeed into turn one?
well, he took something all right, but it wasn't Hamilton into turn one.
It
He
was
just
not.
no, he took a dump on the grid and just stayed there.
He did. Not a good start.
No, I think he dropped 8 places. I think straight off the. I think by. I'm not sure actually. I must have actually. That's one thing I didn't check as to how many corners it took for him to lose those 8 places. But I think it was after lap 1 anyway. He was down 8 places.
It was pretty instant because I was following him off the start because of my prediction last week. I was keeping a little eye on where he was, and it was within the first lap anyway that he had dropped back several places, and I looked odds on for a good bet.
Nailed it this week.
Didn't turn out that way, but anyway.
But it was a great recovery from him. We'll cover that later. But it was a great recovery. But off the grid, off the start line, horrific. Leclerc, I mean, just goes without saying. I mean, even from his Formula 2 days, I mean, he's just such a great driver, and didn't buckle under the pressure with the weight of expectation on him and Ferrari that, going in, that, they're the favorites. And this sort of happened every year, like, Ferrari are the favorites. And then it turns out that they're nowhere. They're battling with mid-table teams. Yeah. Whereas this year there's genuine excitement that they're favorites. And with all that pressure, I mean, he's only a young guy, all that pressure, you would think, you could make a simple mistake. I mean, Max Verstappen made mistakes in the restarts in Jeddah last year when it was important for him to make a good start, and he just bogged down on the grid. But he got off to an excellent start, covered Max Verstappen really well, pushed him off to the side, really covered his angles going into turn one. It's fantastic.
Yeah, a really, really mature drive from Leclerc from start to finish. I know we don't want to talk about the end of the race, but just I like you, I was expecting something to happen, some sort of a little failure, some sort of a lockup under that pressure. I expected Max. He did put pressure, obviously, on him, as we'll get into, but I expected a lot less from Leclerc than I got, and I'm now quite excited going forward about Ferrari and Leclerc, like everyone else.
And a thing I find with Leclerc, what I'm excited about for this season, whereas last season when the battle was Max versus Lewis, and Lewis is a very mature driver in the sense that he's been around the block. He's more of a calculated driver that will back out of a corner and wait for the next one. Max Verstappen's not. He's a bit more hot-headed, and he sees an opening, and it's now or never for Max. Mm-hmm. Charles Leclerc is a bit similar to that. So we could have, if these two teams are fairly close in power and performance, we could have fairly close racing with two drivers who are not willing to back out of a corner or give an inch to their competitor, which could make for an exciting season.
And they have clashed on previous occasions.
Oh, absolutely! Like, and that's more reason to say it going into this season, especially if they're both going to be title contenders. More, it's going to be even more so at the front. But so I mean, off the start, so the first 3 laps, we had a little bit of jockeying around. We had Russell jumped up a couple of places, Magnussen jumped up a couple of places. We had a nice little battle between Perez and Hamilton to try and take that place, which Hamilton obviously got 4th from Perez in the opening laps. So it was great. Actually, the one thing I want to touch on for I think it was lap 1 was Ocon touching the rear of the back right rear of Michael Schumacher. Geez, that'd be good going. Mick Schumacher. And did a full 360 and controlled it. And I saw it once when I watched the race, and I didn't really see it much, or I didn't see it again even until sort of the post-race sort of interviews and things were going on, and they were talking about Mick Schumacher's recovery and was it luck. And I said, I have to go back and have a look at that. Then was it look? And then you see it from the cockpit, and you see how he's fighting to control that car and make sure he gets the correct steering lock on. And it was perfect. I mean, he lost 2 places, but I mean, he didn't spin and stall it. He just spun and kept it going. It was absolutely fantastic.
He ended up fairly high up the grid again. He was at what, P11?
P11 was where he finished up, and I mean, I think he could have done better than that. Only for he didn't change tires when everyone else did. He didn't come in for a third stop under the safety car. He stayed out. And I'll be honest, I don't think the race director really showed much about what was going on at his area of the track when that was happening. So I don't know what the timing was as well, whether he had the window to come in, or was he going to be Paddy last if he had, if he had come in for the pit stops. I didn't see that. Yeah. But and then kind of as the race unfolded, then there was a lot of drivers that I was expecting big things from, who took a while to sort of find their feet. Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, even should I say Kevin Magnussen. It took them a while to sort of just get used to the car and racing conditions. Even though they have done sort of racing sims in testing, this under the actual pressure of the race. Yeah, they took a while to settle in. So, but usually by sort of lap 8, 9, 10, that sort of area, everyone had sort of settled, everyone had calmed themselves, found their groove, and were racing quite well then. Yeah.
We had 2 lockups from Magnussen. I was delighted to see him where he was, and he's putting in a great stint. And then he had 2 lockups, and he got overtaken twice. But he managed to pull his way back again, which is just amazing. That story of him coming back and then qualifying where he did and then finishing where he did.
Yeah, it's class.
It's so exciting. I'm really excited for Haas this season.
And you have to give him credit as well, and not to take anything away from him for those 2 lockups, because they happened early on in the race, those 2 lockups, and the second one gave George Russell the position. But you have to remember, this guy, that the last race he was in, the cars behaved very differently. And I know he's had the Bahrain testing, or he had a couple of days in Bahrain testing, but when it came to actually race conditions, I'm sure it was second nature to him driving the old cars and his old driving style. So going into turn 1 with a car that's 50 odd kilos heavier, with a car that's different aerodynamics, it's very easy going in there expecting the car to do one thing that you're so used to it doing, and all of a sudden it does a very different thing, and you lock up and go straight on. Look, I could be way off the mark, but that would be my understanding of kind of what could have happened there. But either way, what a drive.
Yeah, fantastic. I think by next week, maybe even the next race, or the third race of the season, Haas they're going to be up. Both Mick Schumacher and Magnussen are going to be up in and around the points weekly.
Well, Mick Schumacher, this has to be a race for him now this has to be a season for him to show what he's got. If he can't perform in this Haas car now and I would, maybe it's too early to say, but I would be expecting him to be battling for the points every week, every race. And that doesn't necessarily mean he'll get the points, but if he's battling for that 10th spot, 9th, 10th, every race, I think that's a good that's a good recovery from, or not good showing for this season from him.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had some interesting stuff going on then. The Mercedes, for me, performing way better than I expected. Really? Let's not confuse things either. They were horrific for a Mercedes,
right? Yeah.
But from what I expected to happen today, I'll be honest, I thought the Alfa Romeos could have been ahead of the Mercedes. Wow. I thought maybe Like the Haas now, like I thought the Haas were going to do well, but that even surprised me where Magnussen finished now, I have to say. But but I did think Bottas might have finished ahead of the Mercedes.
Right.
So, but I mean, you had Hamilton consistently, continued to keep that sort of fourth, fifth place, and then when Russell caught up then in sixth, they fairly just held that middle ground, that's sort of best of the rest area, which was for the issues that they have, I thought was phenomenal. Because I mean, they were losing so much time. If you looked at the cornering going into the corners, they were like, if you watched Hamilton especially, because they showed a little bit more on board coming into the corners for him, he was braking much earlier than anybody else, and on any of the slow corners. So any of those, like your turn ones, turn 10s, any of those kind of corners, Hamilton was braking, I mean, sort of probably 50, 100 yards before anybody else. And as a result, I think that could have been costing them. Now, I'm guessing, but could be costing them the guts of 2/10 in a lap.
Now, are you talking pre-lap 12 where the pit stop started and the hards went on, or the whole way through the race?
Oh, the whole way through the race. I just mean in general,
okay.
Just their performance. I think they were losing when they were showing the onboard for Lewis. You could see how early he was braking. You could see how little confidence he had to throw the car into certain corners.
Yeah.
And I think that was costing them, like I said, it must be costing them about 2/10 a lap. And I don't know whether that's directly affected or directly is a knock-on effect from the porpoising, that they're bouncing coming into these corners, and rather than having the confidence to brake late and swing the car in, Hamilton's taking the approach of going earlier on the brakes, maybe taking a different line through the apex, and then trying to get on the accelerator a little bit earlier. So it's, they have big issues, but I mean, that's one of that's probably the least of their concern at the moment. I mean, I think their power unit is probably down on power as well. Compared, I think the Mercedes cars were down on power, which I think is probably related to, again, could be wrong, but I think it could be related to the new E10 fuel, because they had to make changes to the engines, to the combustion engines for them. So I think perhaps that's what's maybe changed, because that's the only thing that's changed from the cars, from the engines last year. So there should be no reason for the cars to change, to have such a performance difference from last year to this year.
So am I right in saying that the bottom six, I heard this morning, that the bottom six cars were all Mercedes engines?
I'll tell you now. Let me just double check. Yes, they are indeed.
Yeah, so there's something happening, that's for damn sure.
And the same, not even just on the race, but even in qualifying, it was the last bottom five were all Mercedes. Actually, no, correction. Sorry, I see Yuki Tsunoda there, 16th. So, there's look, I have no doubt Mercedes are going to fix that issue or those issues within probably 3 or 4 races. And I think they will. If they're not challenging Ferrari, they'll certainly be challenging Perez. And when I say not challenging Ferrari, I should say they're probably not going to challenge Charles Leclerc. But if Sainz doesn't get on top of the driving style that's required, I think they'll challenge him as well. So I think there could be, it could be Hamilton sort of Leclerc, Verstappen, and Hamilton in terms of the pecking order.
Yeah, and that's so exciting to see now. Finally, that there is 3 legitimate teams possibly in the title race.
Yeah,
I know absolutely. It's still early. A lot could happen, but it's super exciting to see that there's more than just the 2 up the top there.
Yeah, and because of their performance issues, they stopped. They were the first to sort of initiate the pit stops. Was the Mercedes? coming in for the hard tire. And one of the things, now I know a lot of teams around them were doing similar pit stop times, 3.4 seconds. But when you look then at the Ferrari doing sort of consistent 2.5 second pit stops, like that's a second, 9/10 to a second you're losing. And later on, they were doing a pit stop of 4 seconds without any sort of issues that were happening in the pit lane. They did a 4-second pit stop. I mean, that's a lot of time to lose on a pit stop.
What's happening at Mercedes in that garage?
Yeah. As Toto said, they put their hand down the toilet.
That was a great analogy.
Absolutely fantastic.
So what was the thought process? Obviously, Mercedes came in first for those hards. What was the tactics there, the thought process behind getting those hards on nice and early?
Well, it was clear to go long. They knew they didn't have the pace to keep with the guys up front. So, and they knew the guys up front were going to be burning up their tires. So I think the idea was, let's put a hard compound tire on. Let's go longer. Let them burn up the tires. They're going to have to come in for a pit stop. It's going to cost them 23, 24 seconds. I'm not sure what a pit stop is. So that if that had worked, it would have been brilliant. But the problem was they didn't do a lot of running on those hard compound tires. There wasn't a lot of data backing up that was going to work. It was just purely a, again, put your hand down the toilet and see what you can find. But so they came out, like Hamilton came out, the tires, the regulations as well state that they can't keep the tires at a higher temperature as they would have done last season. So the tires are effectively colder coming out onto the track. And that was clear when I think Hamilton, he went on, locked up or something on the coming out of the pits.
There's a little bit of a wiggle on turn 1.
Yeah, and then he complained only maybe 2 laps later that there was very little grip from the tires. So I'd say, I know you're only 2 laps in, it would have taken a bit of time for those hards to come up to temperature, but I think they already knew at that stage they'd made a mistake.
Yeah, it was reversal time. And then Sainz coming on the radio in and around there somewhere, well, maybe it was after his stop actually, suggesting that it was going to take 3 stops to get through this race.
Which makes sense considering how hard they were pushing out front. And the concerning part though is the tire degradation. That these tires, now they did say that the medium compound tires was performing better than they expected, but the soft compound tire, I think, was going off way too fast. And I was very disappointed to see that it wasn't allowing, even though we've got this close racing, I don't think the tire wasn't allowing for that close racing to happen consistently, like for a long period of time throughout the race.
Yeah. The Red Bull strategy then, it very much brought Verstappen back into play. And we come into lap 17, I think it was, and we had this 3 laps of constant back and forth going from turn 1 up into turn 4.
That's right, yeah.
This
was genius.
Loved this.
Loved it. I think this was a genius move, I think, from both teams. Obviously Red Bull went for the undercut. Now, according to the second pit stop radio call from Verstappen, complaining about not being allowed to push on the outlap.
Yeah.
That tells me, because he was saying, no, this is twice now, it'll never happen again. So that says to me now, on when they came in for the pit stop then to do the undercut on the first lap, on the first pit stop, he was told not to push as well on the outlap.
Yeah.
But when Leclerc came in, because he was 3.5 seconds behind Leclerc going in for his pit stop, comes out, Leclerc goes in, I think, was it the next lap or was it 2 laps later?
I think he reacted immediately.
So Leclerc comes in, then comes out, and Verstappen has gained that time, and he's then within 0.2, so 0.2 of a second.
Yeah. You've
gained 3.5 seconds or 3 3/10 through the undercut, and he obviously was pushing. Now there was some data there to show the outlaps for both teams, but he was obviously pushing there.
He did complain about the fact that he wasn't allowed to, but I think then I saw on Sky Sports that they analysed what his times would have been, and they weren't really that far off each other. He was
Yeah,
actually pushing anyway.
yeah, yeah. But
Um,
it allowed for what unfolded next was, like you say, 3 laps of just fantastic racing, and very smart racing from Leclerc.
yeah.
He came out. Did you see the interview with him afterwards where he explained what he was doing on that?
No,
Uh,
no.
so what he was saying was, so he knew he needed the DRS going down into turn 4, because he
Yeah.
knows if he didn't have that DRS, then there was no way of taking that position back.
Yeah,
So what he was doing, and this is why I've looked at this a few times now. Do you remember on the first time Max takes on lap 17, Max takes Charles Leclerc down the pit straight.
Yeah.
But he comes from, I think, 9/10 back or something like that.
Yeah, it's a massive margin.
Breezed past him, like, I mean, he was nearly stopping. Like he was pulling into the pits or something. He went past him that quickly. He gained on him and passed him that quickly. And this DRS, like, it's effective, but it's not that effective.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Charles Leclerc came out and said was that he was braking earlier to allow Max Verstappen to go through the DRS detection point at the end of the pit straights coming into turn 1, which would mean that, okay, he's giving up the lead, but it means that Charles Leclerc is now behind Max Verstappen going through that detection point, and now has DRS going down into turn 4, which allowed him each time to take that position back. And I rewatched the race then. So when I rewatched the race, I paid particular attention to that maneuver. And you could see, now I would love to see, and which I don't have any of this data, but I would love to see what his speed was. Like, did he let up on the accelerator going down into turn 1 before he even braked? I know you're saying he braked early, but I think he even backed off a little bit coming down to turn 1.
That. Yeah, it seemed like that in the second one, yeah.
Yeah, that's how Max was catching him so fast down that pit straight. And you could see then that Leclerc was moving over, like, intentionally to allow, it was almost like just opening the door and waving him through. And I don't want to do Verstappen a disservice, because there was more to it than that. It was good, hard racing. Mm-hmm. But I just think it was very clever from Leclerc to realize that if he has any chance of keeping that position, he needs that DRS going down into the straight, going down into turn 4. And he did it 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
Which was even better.
The third time, I was actually quite nervous for Leclerc on the third time, because Verstappen had that lockup then. And he actually took him before the DRS zone. So Verstappen on the third one was coming into the corner, and he locked up, and Leclerc saw his opportunity, and he made sure that he was a good distance ahead coming into that DRS zone before turn 1 or turn 4, sorry. But when he passed him there going into turn number 2, I did feel a little bit of nerves, because you could all see what was happening. He was letting him, well, not letting him by, but he knew that he had that zone to go into coming up to turn 4 in order to get by him again. But he'd actually took the punt then on the third lap to just go for it before that DRS zone hit. He made it stick coming down into that was it then. That was the end of that. I think Verstappen was starting to worry about his tires a little bit.
Well, I don't think it was just the tires. I think it was actually the cooling of the brakes was the issue. I think he had to back off to cool down the brakes. Now, I think he burnt up his tires as well to a large degree, but I think the immediate issue was the brakes were overheating. Which comes back to something we were kind of saying earlier, is that as much as these cars allow for close racing, or from what we can see, a little bit closer racing, it doesn't allow them to sustain that close racing from the tire deg, from the overheating. I mean, we got 3 excellent laps. Now, when I say we got 3 excellent laps, we got 3 laps of sort of, two corners. Two corners. We got 3 laps of turn 1 overtaking, and then DRS overtaking down into turn 4. So outside of that, everything started overheating. And you're thinking, surely this was something that was addressed, that surely this was something that had to have been known by teams, that this was going to be, if the whole reason behind this regulation change was for closer racing, surely, look, and I'm saying this without, we're one race in, so let's give it time. But I'm just thinking, surely not only was the goal closer racing, but sustained closer racing. Yeah. I think Pirelli need to put their hands up a little bit as well and take a bit of ownership of the degradation on those soft tires. And that was only the C3. Now, I could be wrong, but I think that was only the C3 compound. So you still had C4 and C5 to go softer tires. I mean, if you put a C5 around that track, I mean, like as I think Rob said it, they wouldn't have made it to the end of the pit lane.
Yeah.
So, but it was great. We got some good laps. Then I think it was Sainz then came on. It was actually after that battle, Sainz came on then and started saying that I think we were going to have to go. This is going to be a 3-stop race.
Yeah.
And because you had Max Verstappen then not long after that complaining the tires were going. So it's it then sort of, I think everything then settled in. We ended up kind of, everyone got kind of settled into their old kind of, it was like old habits, kind of keeping everything cool, keeping saving tires. Everyone just retained position. There was a couple of back markers that were still, back markers is a bit unfair, but sort of mid groups battling out. You had Bottas doing a few overtakes. You had Magnussen doing a bit of overtaking. So, and I think Joe as well was there or thereabouts doing a bit of overtaking during that time as well. But largely we had 20 odd laps of, go make yourself a cup of tea. There wasn't. Yeah, there was nothing going on. I mean, the only thing we had, I think, going into those kind of slow laps was Hamilton decided, or Mercedes decided that hards were the wrong option and came in for the medium compound.
Yeah. They just kind of they plucked away at where they were in Mercedes, and in the end, obviously, it paid off. But the quality of Hamilton and Russell to finish where they finished in the car that they had, and with the error of going on to the hard and then having to change that, to finish where they finished was pretty outstanding. I think Lewis said it himself that it was a surprise that they even finished on the podium. They thought they were going to be well off that pace.
Absolutely, and even if it had finished with a full complement of drivers, they would have still finished fifth and sixth. Which is still, like I said, I'm still kind of thinking, I expected that, like, how much of a handful that car had been. I didn't even expect them to be there. I thought they would have, I was expecting it to be embarrassing for them. I really did. I thought it was going to be a proper whooping on the track.
Yeah. We did seem to be kind of that was the race lulling then until. Would it have been the next big thing that really happened was enter Pierre Gasly and the flaming AlphaTauri
driving it with the cape flying out of the cockpit like a superhero coming in to save the race,
like a Latifi goat. So enter safety car. Everyone comes back from their cup of tea. Everyone's waking up and stopping, looking at their phones,
and everybody gets in. And everyone gets in for soft tires as well. Well, everyone, but Mick Schumacher and someone else. Someone else didn't pit, actually. Do you know who didn't pit? I was checking this out earlier. There was someone else that didn't make a third stop. And I'm not 100% sure who it was. It's no big deal if you don't know off the top of your head. But
no, I don't know.
All right. Well, I know Mick Schumacher didn't come in. But anyway, everybody gets in for soft tires. We had the race director call that all cars may now overtake the safety car.
The PTSD kicking in.
Yeah, which but didn't allow all cars to, because but my understanding of the rule was always that you allow all cars to unlap themselves and they have to catch up to the back of the pack before the safety car peels in.
Yeah.
And Now, maybe I'd have to look into the regulation. Maybe it's they have to go half distance or something like that. But either way, they didn't allow them to catch up to the back of the pack, because when the race got underway again, we were wondering where half the cars were.
Yeah, I'd sent you a text and I was wondering how that top 10 had actually got away from the bottom 10 so quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that seemed to be the case, I think. Yeah.
But we had 6 laps left and the safety car peels in.
Yes.
We had signs instantly on the back of Verstappen hounding him. We had, I think we had Hamilton on the back of Perez hounding him. Now, I don't know whether that was early signs of power issue at that stage.
Yeah, maybe.
I
mean, Verstappen was also pulling out his old trick of sitting alongside Leclerc. You know, you're really coming back to Abu Dhabi, the way that he was pulling up beside him, just coming into that final corner before the straight.
But I love that. I love that aggressive bullying, like
Yeah.
And actually, we didn't touch on just before that safety car came out that there was issues with that Red Bull prior to that safety car. So we had, so if we just take it back a little bit before we bull on with our final 6 laps here of absolute drama.
Let me get into them.
Yeah. Okay, no, we had at the start of the race, Max he had issues with the cooling already, and engine braking. He had already complained about engine braking going into through the middle of the corners. Yeah. So that was issues he was already having early on. Now the cooling of the brakes, I think everybody was having. Well, not everyone, but to some extent, a lot of teams were having that anyway. But the engine braking was maybe some sort of an issue there.
Yeah.
Then you had, which is where I think some issues may have been unfolding, where he came in for his pit stop on lap 44, I think it was, and you had coming in for his soft tires, and then literally on lap 45 he was on the radio. In fact, the radio calls we get over the TV are actually a lap late, so they're usually, so if it's showing on the TV at lap 45, it's usually that they did the team call at lap 44. It's usually a lap behind.
Yeah.
So we can sort of assume maybe half a lap out of the pits, Max was on the team radio saying that the steering was heavy, that there was issues with it. Now, there's a couple of theories as to what's happened here. That that it may have been. Well, one theory is that it was some issue relating to what happened later on, and the other theory, which is more likely, is that when the car was dropped, that something had driven into either some sort of a steering rack or hydraulics that had then caused the issue there. So obviously I tried to look back at that pit stop, but I couldn't see it. I want to see whether the car was maybe sort of released from the jack, maybe a little harsher than it normally is. I mean, to be fair, those jacks are quick release anyway, so usually they hit the deck at whatever gravity allows them to drop down at. But perhaps it was just something a little bit more awkward in that one. But so there was issues there anyway before the restart. So he was still, even with that steering issue, he was still putting in fast sectors.
Yes.
So that just shows the caliber of driver you have, especially when I think he was saying that he was having delays in the steering. So like, he was coming into a corner and he was trying to steer, but it was sort of like a fraction of a second later, the car would turn, and vice versa. When he's coming out of the corner, he wants to straighten it up to get the power down, and it takes a fraction of a second before the car actually straightens up. Yeah. So the fact that he was putting in purple sectors with that issue is pretty incredible.
Unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, he was adjusting in the moment to what the car was giving him, and still turning out, the same sort of laps as he would have if the car was absolutely perfect. Yeah. Which is just outstanding. He really is just unbelievable.
Incredible.
And it turned out to be fuel pump issues, I think, was it? With the Red Bull?
For the remaining laps?
Yeah.
So yeah. So what happened then? So let's Jesus, Scotty, let's not.
Sorry, I'm just dying to get to these last 6 laps. I'm so
Fucking
excited.
All the Christmas crackers are gone before the dinner's even had. Like, Jesus.
Oh.
So that's usually me. I'm usually
I'm
all
sorry.
over that type of excitement.
Rein me back, please.
So yeah, so we had signs all over the back of Verstappen on the restart. We had Hamilton all over the back of Perez, and then we got maybe 2 laps in, and Max is then screaming over the radio that the loss of power from the battery. The guy's coming back over the radio saying, battery's fine. Proceeds then Max having a meltdown on the radio.
He really did lose it.
And then it was clear then, as I think, I'm not sure what turn they were coming into, but the red lights then popped up on the rear wing of Verstappen, which sort of indicated a failure. And Sainz then obviously easily breezed past him, and then of course then he just dropped back from there. Everyone started taking him, and he was told to pull into the pits. So that was drama. That was our second place man gone, who had the potential of challenging Leclerc for the remaining few laps. Although Leclerc was stretching a lead of 2 seconds, but that's possibly down to the power issue. But that was one Red Bull gone, and then we get to lap 56 of 57, and Perez is on the radio then with Hamilton chomping at the bit behind him, chomping at the gearbox behind him. Perez comes on the radio then to say that losing power, and you're just like, oh my God, both Red Bulls, what is going on? I mean, that's just incredible. And he keeps going, and you're thinking, okay, there's 1 lap to go. They're coming around. They're starting the final lap. You're thinking, this guy's, he'll get it. He'll get it. He'll hold off Hamilton into turn 1. Engine goes, rears lock up, spins the car around, and everybody sails past him. And that is the second Red Bull out, and that's Hamilton up to P3 and on the podium.
Now, I initially thought I took a glance away from the TV as he was coming into that corner, and I initially thought that Hamilton actually gave him a touch, just the way that he spun round.
That's what I thought as well. I thought it was actually a touch from Hamilton, and I would have been raging. But then you realize, no, he locked the rears had locked on him.
Yeah, if Netflix were just in the pit lane drooling when they thought that Hamilton had touched Perez. We've got everything we want from this first race.
Rivalry has now, the rivalry of Netflix or Drive to Survive Season 5 is Hamilton and Perez.
Yeah, and Gasly versus fire for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So our final positions then was, if you have them up there, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had, if you want to go through them there.
Go on, you take top 10 and I'll take bottom 10.
Okay, so we had Leclerc, Sainz and Hamilton. We had Russell, Magnussen, Bottas, Ocon, Tsunoda, Alonso, and Joe himself.
My Joe. Bottom 10 at 11, Mick Schumacher, Lance Stroll in 12, 13 was Albon. The 2 McLarens, 14 and 15, Ricardo, Norris, and then Latifi and Hulkenberg bringing up the rear. We had 3 DNFs then, Perez, Verstappen, and Gasly's on fire.
Before we kind of wrap up on the teams themselves, like say Ferrari, for example, they were in control of that race.
Oh, completely.
From the start. And I think Leclerc had more to give. Leclerc managed his tires, I think, maybe better than Sainz did, but Sainz was still trying to find his driving style. So I think I do think Ferrari have a lot more to come from them this season, and I think that it's just such a well-developed package. I think they're in a great position.
It speaks volumes that when Sainz is coming over the radio at the end of the race and saying, apologies, I can do much better, and there'll be more to come for me in the coming weeks. And he came P2.
But I do understand where he's coming from, because I mean he was sort of dropping back 8, 9, 10 seconds from Leclerc.
Yeah.
Whereas last season they were more neck and neck. So I think he does realize he hasn't gotten up to speed as quick as Leclerc has, and had Verstappen not have gone out with a retirement, then I think he would have been finished P3. But look, fantastic result from Ferrari.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll just run through a few things from the teams. Like, I mean, Mercedes there, they have issues to fix. They have the porpoising issues to fix. Wasn't very noticeable in the sort of the heat of the racing, but it was, like I said, we said earlier, it was very sort of evident when, you saw them in cockpit coming into corners, braking early, not being able to kind of throw the car in. I do think as well, they have to do something with the pit stops. They're very slow in the pit stops. They're either on par with the slowest or they're slower, so they're on par. Some of the slowest pit stops were like that mid 3 seconds, late, 3.8, 3.9 seconds. I mean, they had a pit stop of 4 seconds. I mean, they fixed that. That's a big issue.
Yeah. You'd imagine Mercedes are going to be coming away from this weekend with a lot of things to learn for next week, and some heads are rolling at the moment.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think I have that they'll probably do it in 3 or 4 races. I think they're going to solve a lot of these problems. The power unit, like I actually had a look at some of the top speeds and stuff like that. I mean, I think they're down on average something like 8 kilometers per hour on the Red Bulls, something like that. And I don't know whether they've done something to their cars that's given them the advantage. I know Ferrari have, because they sang that from the rooftops. Yeah. Red Bull, I'm not sure where they have. Mercedes, I don't know whether they neglected the engine side of things. I highly doubt it. Or whether it is something to do with this E10 fuel going from the 5.75 ethanol to the 10% ethanol, whether that has some issue. But yeah, 3 or 4 races time, I think Mercedes will be back on top. Or not back on top, but in the mixer.
So looking at the constructors there, team by team, Haas are sitting at number 3. How do you think Haas got on this weekend?
Haas had a great weekend. Absolute stellar weekend.
It was great to actually see Gunther Steiner smiling at the end of the race weekend.
Saw a great meme of Gunther with the meme that was going around with the My Boat.
Oh yeah.
But it's now a speedboat. I was like, yeah, class.
Oh, it's fantastic. What a character.
Brilliant. They made a great decision bringing in Kevin Magnussen. He's so hungry. He just wants to prove that he should have been here all along. And look, I think it's clear that we know why he wasn't there all along. It was purely a financial decision, nothing more. And Haas look a much better team since they've gotten rid of the issues that they had last season.
Are we calling him the issues?
And they're an issue, yeah.
You shall not be named.
Yeah, you are an issue and you have been gotten rid of. But it's worked out. I mean, the team just look, I don't know, there's just such a buzz about them. Great. It's fantastic.
They just need to work on the livery a little bit, but other than that, all good.
I see they added the American flag, or the United States flag, on the just towards the end of the cockpit towards the nose cone, and I was like, wow, that was, if everybody's slagging that it looked like a Russian flag, the car, so they decided, well, we've got rid of the blue, so we're just going to stick the United States flag on it. They may as well have just painted the bloody thing in the stars and stripes and be done with it. Like,
yeah, if anything, was no more of an FU to the old sponsors. It is now plastering an American flag on the car that was previously a Russian flag. Great. So
Alfa Romeo, your so-called underperformer of Bottas, but I think you had Joe as the overachiever, didn't you?
I did, yeah, and I'm happy with that choice. He did very, very well in his first race. Picking up a point is no mean feat, in fairness, in your first race.
Absolutely brilliant. Couldn't be happier for him. And needless to say, I had Jing shouting the Shanghai corner for Joe. So
his English is fantastic. It's better than mine.
Yeah, that's a given.
That's fair enough. But so, yeah, really good.
Alpine, I mean, look, it's a bit of a grey, bit of a grey kind of area at the moment for them. I thought they were going to be a lot further back. I'll be honest. I thought they were going to be down there with the Aston Martins. So yeah, they did better than I thought, but what does that matter? But just they did better than I thought they were going to. But not really making any real advancements on where they were last season. And their whole L plan is, 100 races for Alpine to be back standing on the top step. And you're a quarter of a way through those races now. And you're fairly, you haven't made any progress on last year. Again, we're one race in, so let's cut some people some slack.
Ocon did lose part of his car as well in, I think it was FP1.
Oh, yes, the side pod blew off or something.
Yeah, so he ended up with the older side pods on his car for the weekend. So I'd imagine he'd been preparing in the Bahrain testing with the new side pods, or were they just put on for this weekend? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know on that one.
But still a strong finish by Ocon, in fairness.
And he had a 5-second penalty as well.
Oh, is right. Sorry.
To go with that.
Yeah.
So, and another team now that kind of was a bit of a bit of a damp one was AlphaTauri. Again, expected more. They're sort of around about where they were last season. I don't see. In fact, maybe at this stage they've taken a little bit of a step back. But again, we're early days, so we'll see. But the next there on that constructors list, Aston Martin.
Wow.
Ouch.
As you said, Vettel has to be sitting in that hotel room, just itching to sign a retirement form.
I mean, the guy is going to have COVID for the whole season. Still testing positive, lads. Can't come back.
Yeah.
See you next season when you have a better car.
Ouch.
That I don't even know where they go. I'll be honest. All the other teams I could kind of, I see, well, they've come out and explained issues. You can see where the issues are, whether it's handling, whether it's performance from the engine, whatever it might be. You can see it. Aston Martin, I don't know. I just can't it's just not happening. Like it's not going anywhere. I can't even say 3 or 4 races time they're going to be better than where they are. I'll be like, there's nothing backing up any potential improvements to come.
Yeah. And it looks maybe like I saw Ted reporting that it might be another week of Hülkenberg before Vettel even gets back into the car again. So
Vettel will be delighted with that.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks off from then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't look good, does it? Stroll, a few little mistakes by Stroll. He had a tip with Norris at one stage. Just Stroll doing Stroll things.
It was such a dreary, dull performance from Aston Martin. It was just, there was nothing there. Absolutely.
It's so sad because it's a lovely looking car.
It looks great.
That's about the height of it, though. So my car looks good too, but doesn't mean it drives well.
Exactly. Exactly. Like, it looks great, but it just goes like shit. Williams, better than I expected. Although I did have Albon as my overachiever. I mean, he finished 14th, was it? And I wonder, like, the two teams that I feel, well, Aston Martin now aside, but I wonder, is it anything to do with that sort of side pod design and how the aero is working? Like, I mean, both them and Mercedes have gone for a really aggressive package for their aero and their side pods. And I don't know. Now, obviously Williams are going to have a knock-on effect if there's a Mercedes power issue. Obviously they're a customer, so that's going to have a knock-on effect. So look, you can maybe take a couple of tenths or give them a couple of tenths on that. But I wonder, I have a feeling those designs they've just gone the wrong direction completely with those cars. And it's starting and I'll be honest, I saw McLaren, or sorry, see Mercedes putting on fins and all kinds of stuff, trying to adjust it. And I'm like, I think you may just get the pump out and inflate those side pods, because I think that's the only thing that's gonna, well, not the only thing, but I just, yeah, look, that's it. I just think there's possibly an issue there with those side pods. Let me not get hung up on it. McLaren, Jesus, right?
God almighty. Can I tell you a little story? On Thursday, I went, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I got hooked in by, I think it was F1.com. There was an ad or something. I saw some merchandise. I was like, oh, that looks nice. So on Thursday, I bought a black Danny Ricciardo McLaren t-shirt in the hope that it would bring some luck to McLaren in the coming races, and it seems that my purchase has gone the other way. They seem doomed,
and it's now become a bath mat.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to wear it now because it's kind of like, I don't know, like a Luke Chadwick Manchester United jersey or something. It's just so unfortunate.
Wow. I wouldn't wear it when you're driving your car.
Well, it might stop me breaking the speed limit, maybe.
It's I saw another, sorry, geez, I'm all about the memes today. I saw one about the evolution of the recycle bin.
Oh, right.
And they had the Microsoft Windows recycle bin, and it just shows it from like 95, Windows 95, 98, et cetera, and then 2022 the McLaren.
There has been some fantastic memes going around with the McLaren, like was it orange is the new house?
Love it, like absolutely love it.
It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So yeah, look, we touched on their issues earlier. We know it was, and we knew it was coming. And I don't think it's come as a surprise to them either. From kind of their answers they've been giving in interviews and stuff like that, I think they're kind of aware of what's going on and they know how to fix it. I think though it is, like we're saying, they've designed the car in a wind tunnel based on certain airflow, and they've now had to change that. So it's not a quick fix. No. So that's an issue for them. And Red Bull, bottom of the constructors. So this
we
is
don't
where
need to really go into why they. Well, I suppose why they finished where they did.
Well, the issue is as to what the problem was. So you were saying earlier, when you jumped the gun about the fuel pumps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was Helmut Marko came out and said that it was that they are still investigating, but they're under the impression that it is the fuel pump is the issue. There was an investigation by who, I don't know, I'm assuming by FAI or the developers of fuel pumps, and they confirmed and have confirmed that it wasn't a fuel pump issue.
Oh,
so it's a Red Bull issue.
Right.
So my theory on this, and I got it right with McLaren, so I'm going to stick my neck out a second time on my theory. And I'm sure by the time we finish recording this podcast, news will come out and it'll blow my theory out of the water.
Yeah, maybe, but you've been on point in fairness.
So my theory is that this is the first season for the Red Bull powertrains. Excuse me, for the Red Bull powertrains, and now I know they've taken a lot of Honda staff and stuff like that. So I mean, it's effectively still Honda there with a Red Bull powertrains sort of stamp over it.
Yeah.
But this E10 fuel, right? This ethanol, the 10% ethanol, is more corrosive than the last year's. I think it's 5.75 or something like that percent. So what that means is like it erodes things like, rubber seals, all this type of stuff a lot more, things that you would have in an engine and certainly in fuel pumps and things like that. So I think, well, not that it was the fuel pump, but things like that.
Yep.
I think the issue may be that the change on the fuel from to the E10 fuel has caused something to corrode away in the engine. Which then, now I think it's given that the problem was that the engine was being starved of fuel.
Yep.
So if it's not a fuel pump, and I think a lot of the components, I think there's two different manufacturers, I think, that develop components relating to the fuel pumps. And I think both of them are ruled out. So you have to go either go further back or further forward in terms of the failure. I mean, it's not a tank, so the pump is, I think, is sunk into the tank, taking the fuel out. So if it's not the pump, then it's not the tank, so it's not at that point. So it's obviously up further where the fuel is going into the engine. So if there's seals and stuff around there, if those seals have been corroded. Now, I'm saying this, but as I'm talking on the fly, I mean, surely if that was happening, there would have been it would have caused a fire. If it was fuel leaking out that way. But if it was corroded internally, so it was still sealed inside, but it wasn't either the correct fuel or the correct volume of fuel wasn't making it to the engine. But I just think it just corresponds with the changeover from Honda to Red Bull powertrains. They don't have the experience there. That they do have some of the Honda engineers, but they don't have them all. And there was the change to the E10 fuel that's more corrosive, that would have required changes to the engine to deal with that change. So I think that's where that's my money is on. That's where the issue was, that something has corroded away during the race, prevented either the flow or the correct flow of fuel to the engine, and that's where Max lost power and or had low power, and Perez lost power completely and had the engine just seized up.
Yeah.
And so that's my theory on Red Bull.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. I have nothing to contest really there. We'll see. I mean, we can come back to it next week and we can revisit and see if that. I'm sure, we'll have some sort of news before next week.
So our predictions for this race from last week. So let's see. You had.
So can I just explain how we're going to be going forward with, say, the predictions? So will we keep a tally of each week who has kind of won? We're going to compete every week.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. All right. So for the top three, you get a point for each person that lands in the top three. And you also get a point for, say, if you're underachiever, underachieves, or if you're overachiever, overachieves. Pretty simple. So it's out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that you can score total.
All right, perfect. All right, well, I tell you what, you tell me, who did you have, Scotty?
I really don't want to read this out. Okay, so I had, in order of first to third, I had Verstappen, Russell, and I had Sainz.
Perfect.
Yeah, well, not really.
Well, I can't say much. I had Leclerc, Sainz, so I started off well, and then I had Verstappen third, which could have been in there only for that issue.
I mean, it was odds on up until the last few laps, so that was a great shout. So already you've got 2 points. I have got 1. Both on Sainz. My
flop then was my floppy flop was Lando Norris.
What a shout! I mean, I didn't see this happening, but you really called that one.
I was. I have to say, I'm not going to lie. I had a bit of a smile on my face when that was happening. I felt sorry for Lando. I like Lando and I like McLaren, but I was thinking of the predictions and I was like, nailed it.
Yeah. This has ruined F1 for me now because I'm always thinking about my predictions as the race goes on.
So go on, call out who's your flop?
My flop was Valtteri Bottas, and flopped his way into the top 10. God bless him. So no points there. Bottas did very well, in fairness. Who was your surprise?
Albon, and I'm not going to accept it was a complete failure. He actually came. I just checked there on he actually came 13th. Mm-hmm. I think that was okay. I think it was okay. Okay, I know that the by the letter of the law, he had to be in the top 10 to overachieve, and he wasn't. but I'm still taking it as a win. But even though I'm taking the knot on that one.
I mean, he did finish above Latifi. He had 2 McLarens behind him, which, you know, this week it's sad to say that that's not much of an achievement. And then he had Nico Hulkenberg behind him as well. You know, he outscored, didn't score any points, but he outranked his teammate this week, in fairness. So good start. You know, if the other cars had all finished, then he would have been in what, 17th or 18th.
Are we doing a Will Buxton on this?
Well, go on, then.
If he had finished third, he'd have been on the podium.
I'm not going to do my Will Buxton impersonation. I was about to jump into it there. I was like, no, I'm not going to commit to it. I have to perfect it a little bit more. So yeah, my surprise was Joe, and
yeah, he snuck in there.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah. I was happy with that. I actually took that away from myself this morning. I gave myself a 0 for Joe. And then I rethought it. I was like, no, that's a decent start.
Now, if you're in the points, you've now hang on a second. Having said that, we have to think now. I don't want to overcomplicate things here, but I mean, if someone went with their, oh, do you know what? I'm going to pick an overachiever, and I'm going to go with, I don't know. I'm going to go with, say, next week. I'm going to go with Kevin Magnussen.
Well, it does depend on previous results. I mean, and form. That's going to come into account as the weeks go on.
We'll debate that as we go.
Yes. Yeah. So,
all right.
It ended up this week. Then the score was 3-2 to you. So you are now 1-0 up.
I hear the internet cheering.
Already, I can see a bit of a theme each week where I am lamenting my terrible choices. But we'll see how it goes. We'll see. I'm sure I'll get.
Well, I'm curious now. Give me your top 3 now for Jeddah.
Okay, so I was thinking about this morning. I think Red Bull are going to sort out the issues that they had this week. I think that's going to be sorted by this weekend. And I think Verstappen is going to be hungry as hell. I think he's
fast
going to
around
take,
Jeddah.
Yeah, I think he's going to be he's going to take pole in qualifying. I think he's going to win the race.
So yeah. Geez, you've doubled down. All I wanted was a race winner. You've doubled down. You're saying he's going to take pole position as well as the race.
But in fairness, if he wins the race and doesn't get pole, I still get a point for that because he's my number one. I think I think Ferraris are just so strong. So I'm gonna go Sainz Leclerc. I think Sainz is going to put it together this week, and Leclerc is going to have some issues performing. Not sure why. It's just a shout.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll go with my top 3 then before we move on to the.
Yeah, let's do it.
The flops and drops. Okay. So P1. I am going to go with now. You think I would have prepared my top 3?
No, it's probably better to think on the fly.
Think on the fly, yeah. So P1, I am going to go with. Do you know? I'm going to stick with Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
I think that Ferrari just looks so on it at the moment. It's fantastic. So I think he's. I'm gonna put him for the win.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do what I'm not going to double down here and say he's going to get pole position, but I'll go with the win. The reliability thing for Red Bull. Yes, I do think you're right. I think they will solve that issue. I don't think they're going to have another DNF next week.
No.
So I would go with Verstappen second.
Right. That's a good
now
shot.
I'm going to remove my Ferrari fanboy hat now because Sainz I'm not putting in third.
Oh, okay. I think I know where you're going with number 3 then.
I'm glad you do because I have one. I'm 99% sure. I'm about to say it. I'm just holding back for a second while I mull it over in my head.
Okay. Well, I'm going to type in the first letter.
Don't. All right. Yeah, I think it's going to be Hamilton in third.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I think there's the corners in Jeddah, bar a few, are fairly fast. Okay, there's the chicane out of the straight. There's the turn onto the straight, which is a slow corner, but there's it's fast. Hamilton is fast. Even in a car that's rattles the brains out of his arse, it's still fast. So that's my top three. Leclerc first, Verstappen second, Hamilton third.
Yeah,
There's some great drivers. That's an all-star lineup there. That is.
Yeah, if you're doing like a celebrity five-a-side, that's a good team.
That's good. Yeah, not that they can play football for.
No, imagine. Imagine they're probably terrible. Actually, Pierre Gasly's decent enough at football. I saw him playing.
Oh, is he?
Summer. Yeah, yeah.
He won't be on the podium.
No, he will not. He will not. In fact, he'd be weighed down by the fire extinguisher that they're going to have to put in the back of that AlphaTauri.
And Pierre, if you can leave your bibs in the bag,
and give them a wash before you put them in there. For
we may need you for a keeper next week, but you won't be on the podium this week. All right. Okay. So, all right. Give me your flop.
My flop is this week. I'm choosing it out of pure stubbornness. There's no reason towards this. I've thought very little about it. I'm just being stubborn. And I think he's going to be a flop because he did quite well this week. So in turn, if he doesn't do well this coming week, then it would certainly be a flop. So my choice for flop of the week is going to be yet again Valtteri Bottas. Sorry, buddy. I actually quite like him as a driver.
Do you know, that is a bold call, because Bottas is like, this is a quick track. He likes this track as well.
Yeah.
And that Alfa Romeo, I think, could be quite quick. I could see him. Yeah, I could see him in getting 6th or 7th or something again next week. All right.
Let's see.
All right. My flop will be. Geez, I better wrap this up quick, otherwise we'll be podcasting for another 6 hours. All right. My flop is going to be. God, it's too easy to go with Lando Norris again, really, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he's not really a flop because we're expecting him to flop.
Well, that's true. Okay. Flop for next week will be. Oh, Jesus!
This is quite hard to pick, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know? I'm gonna say one, and I have to justify it after I say it. But I'm gonna go Kevin Magnussen.
Oh.
I think he's gonna crash out.
Buzzkill. Oh, okay. I can see the reason behind that. Yeah.
Just getting to grips with this car. He hasn't raced on this track before, and it's fast. It's dangerous. And I just think he's going to go Leroy Jenkins and send it into a corner.
Whoa. Yes.
So,
okay. I love that.
Give me your surprise.
My surprise for this coming week, I think, will be Mick Schumacher. Outside the top 10 last week, but I think he's going to get in the top 10 this week. I think he's put it together. He had a crash here last year. I think he'll be eager enough to try and prove himself on this track, and I think he's going to do quite well.
I think so. If he doesn't go out with Magnussen.
That's it, yeah.
All right, my surprise will be. Good Lord. Out of those shopping trolleys in the bottom 10.
I mean, it's so hard to choose, isn't it?
Which has the least wonky wheel attached to it? Like,
now we still don't know if for sure whether Hulkenberg or Vettel will be driving the other Aston Martin.
It does not matter if Usain Bolt is driving that McLaren.
Okay,
doesn't matter. That's not. There's not even a surprise there.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to give you that option to
yeah. No, I'll go with. Okay, McLaren's no. Aston Martin, no. Jesus, this one's tough.
Isn't it really?
Jetta. Oh, fuck it. You know, I'm going to double down. You double down on one of yours. I'm going to double down on one of mine. I'm going to go Albon.
Yeah, I could see that coming. It's the only real sensible choice there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's the best of the rest in that back half of the grid in terms of car and being able to drag performance out of it. So I'm going to go Albon.
Yeah, very sensible choices. I like it.
Right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. As always, if you want to get in touch with your own questions, comments, or corrections, send them on to feedback@latenightracereview.com. And until then.